I used to love exploring the woods. But that all changed one summer in a small town in Missouri. My parents were both scientists, and because of their work, we moved around a lot. But I didn't mind much. I was 9 years old and had plenty of curiosity to keep me entertained. And that's when I met Zach Mays. He lived next door, and it was like we'd known each other forever. Zach was just like me, adventurous, always eager to explore. Soon enough, we became inseparable. One day, as we explored the woods near our homes, we came across a section so thick with thorn bushes it seemed like nature's own wall. We tried to find a way through it, but after getting a few painful scratches, we gave up and moved on to other areas. Eventually, we forgot about that mysterious thicket, until one October night. Zach had come over for a sleepover, and we'd been watching horror movies late into the evening. Suddenly, he sat up, his eyes lighting up with a mischievous glint, and said, "Let's go check out that thorny part of the woods." I hesitated, the memory of those dense bushes flickering in my mind, but his excitement was contagious. So we grabbed our flashlights, garden shears, and set off. As we walked out under the eerie glow of a blood-red moon, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us. When we reached the spot, to our shock, the thorn bushes were gone. In their place was a narrow, shadowy path winding deeper into the woods, almost as if inviting us in. I felt a chill run down my spine, but Zach, as always, just smirked and led the way. I followed, feeling a strange, growing dread with each step. The forest around us felt wrong that night. It was too quiet, almost like it was holding its breath. Our flashlights cast long, twisted shadows on the path, and the trees seemed to close in on us the further we went. After what felt like hours, we stumbled into a clearing, and there, in the center, was a lake. I frowned, pulling out a map I'd brought. No lake was marked anywhere in this part of the forest. The air felt thick with something, I don't know, ancient. I wanted to turn back, but Zach was already at the water's edge, peering down. He took a step back, his face pale. "Look," he whispered. I leaned over to see, and my heart dropped. Our reflections weren't there. The water mirrored everything, the twisted trees, the sky. But where we should have been, there was just empty space. The reflected forest looked darker, more twisted, almost alive. Even the trees in the reflection looked like they were covered in something fleshy, pulsing slightly under the light. Zach, curious as ever, picked up a stick and started poking at the water, as if testing if it was real. I wanted to tell him to stop, but he turned to give me a grin, just as his foot slipped and he tumbled into the lake. I froze, staring at the water, waiting for him to resurface. Seconds passed, then a full minute, and panic began to claw at me. I shined my flashlight on the water, and that's when I noticed something chilling. In the lake's reflection, there was a faint light coming from what looked like the forest entrance, as if Zach's flashlight had somehow moved to the other side. Against all reason, I took a deep breath, gripped my flashlight tightly, and jumped in after him. Instantly, everything spun around me in a whirl of darkness and cold. When I finally surfaced, I found myself somewhere else. It was the same lake, but the forest around me was a twisted nightmare version of what we'd left behind. The trees were covered in sickly, fleshy vines, and the sky was a swirling, deep red. I stumbled forward, finding Zach's flashlight and broken garden shears lying nearby. My heart raced as I followed a trail of his things, praying he was okay. The trail led me to an old, decaying barn that seemed to loom out of the darkness, covered in the same twisted, fleshy vines. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. What I saw made me freeze in terror. There was Zach, hanging on a rusty meat hook, barely alive. His skin was pale, and his breathing was shallow. With his last bit of strength, he handed me his phone and whispered, "Run." On the phone screen was the last photo he'd taken, a glimpse of the thing that had brought him here. The creature had long, twisted limbs, a spine that arched unnaturally, and a mouth full of sharp, glistening teeth. Before I could even process it, I heard something behind me, a raspy, animalistic breath. Slowly, I turned, and there it was. The creature stood in the doorway, its eyes dark and empty, its body twitching as it moved toward me. In my terror, I dropped Zach's phone, and the flash went off, momentarily stunning it. Realizing what had happened, I picked up the phone, frantically using the flash to keep the creature at bay as I backed out of the barn. I didn't look back, just ran as fast as I could, following my flashlight beam through the twisted forest. As I reached the lake, the creature let out a blood-curdling screech that seemed to shake the very ground. I threw myself into the water, plunging into the cold depths, desperate to escape. When I finally emerged, I was back in the familiar forest, breathless and alone. I stumbled home and told my parents everything, though they thought I just had a nightmare. The police searched the woods but found nothing. No barn, no clearing, no lake. It was as if that other world had vanished completely. It's been years, and people still say I was hallucinating, that my mind was coping with trauma. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear it. The faint, distant screech of something unnatural, echoing from deep within the forest, as if it's still out there, searching for me.